Hi everyone, you're welcome to the Build Writing Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to bust the myth. Should you really read more before you start writing? Now, the first thing Stephen King once said, he said, if you don't have the time to read, you don't have the time to write, period. And that goes to show a lot that as writers, one of the where we get our resources, our raw materials from is from reading stories. We get inspired. We learn from how writers have written and crafted different forms of stories and words, and that for us is more like a stepping stone, like we walk on the shoulders of giants to write our own stories too. So if you don't have the time to read, you don't necessarily have the time to write, because it's more like yeah, honestly. Okay, so the question is, how much reading do I need to get before I start writing? Yeah, when do I know that enough is enough? Because I feel like I need to read more. I feel like I've not really started reading. That's a lot of things people have in mind. The first thing I want to address is this: reading is different from writing. As much as I tell you and I say that you need to read a lot in order to be able to write well, reading is different from writing. There are a lot of readers that are not writers, right? Of course, but then they can't necessarily be writers that are not readers. Yeah. But a lot of readers, they read books, they love reading, they read different stories, they follow authors, they read, and they love reading fantasies, following different stories and everything, but they are not writers. It's not like, oh, they attempted to write and then the writing did not work for them. That's not their thing. No, it's more like how people listen to music, but then they are not singers. Like, I listen to music, but I don't like try to sing. But then it's hard, it's rare. How possible is it for someone to sing, to love to sing, and not love to listen to music, right? Okay, so now the thing I want to pull your attention to right now is this. For most of us, we feel that we have not read enough, so we cannot start writing. And because we feel that we've not read enough, we don't write. And because we don't write, we say, okay, let's read more. And when we read more, we'll get better at doing these things and everything. But the thing is this: your writing will never get as good if you don't write. That's the thing. As much as you read and stuff like that, it's awesome, it's wonderful, but it won't automatically become good because you read a lot. So because your writing doesn't get good, you say, okay, my writing is not as good as it ought to be. It is because I do not read a lot. So if I start reading a lot, my writing will get good. Now, of course, that it says itself is not wrong or right. There's some elements of truth to it. But the thing is this: because you're not writing, your writing would not get good. And because your writing doesn't get good, you feel that you need to read more. And so you keep reading and reading and reading and reading and never necessarily get to writing. Now, another point I want to point your attention to is the fact that reading itself can be a form of procrastination from the writing itself. Writing, for most people, is a difficult task. It's a task of courage. It's a task where you start writing and you don't even know where the story would take you to. You don't even know where the story would lead you to, right? So you start writing and you just take an act of faith. Unlike reading, the writer has done the work for you already. Of course, reading itself is a hard task for most people, but it's enjoyable, it's fun. You're reading, you're following the story, and everything is awesome, right? But with writing, you find out things, you're working out things, you don't even know where the story is going for most cases, right? It's difficult. So for most of us, we feel we will take reading itself as it becomes a form of, sometimes, most times, you need to know this, that when we procrastinate, it's not that we are lazy. It's just that we are afraid of that particular task some of the times. So the time we ought to be writing, even though it's free for us to write, we spend it doing other things. So we spend it researching about our favorite author, what they did, what really inspired them to write. Now that itself is not bad, right? But that time we're doing that is the time we've dedicated in the past to say, okay, in so and so time I'm going to write. So we don't write and we spend that time doing other tasks that looks like writing. It looks like writing, like you're reading a book, analyzing a book, doing all this stuff. It looks like writing, but it's not writing. Now, of course, they have their own elements. They're important in some way or the other, but itself, it's not writing. The writing cannot, like, there is no shortcut to avoid the writing itself. You have to do the writing, right? So once we understand that, we say, okay, what next? What next is the next approach we would use? Well, the next approach is we have to separate our reading from writing, and we have to make writing as simple, definite, and straightforward as possible, so that we don't get mixing it up with tasks. Because the time you ought to be writing, you could actually be using to edit your old writing pieces. Now, right, editing your old works, there's nothing bad with that, right? But that time should not be taken that, oh, this is the time I spent writing. No, it's editing, right? It's very similar, it's very close to writing itself. and you're like, oh yeah, this stuff. And then you're like, oh, I'm reading stuff. Now, reading a lot of work is good, but the thing is this: the reading that you're reading, you will get to appreciate it more if you spend time writing. I'll say that again. The reading that you're reading, you get to appreciate more of it. You get to use more of it. You get to attain the purpose of which you read in the first place, which is to get better at writing if you spend the time writing. Because this is what happens when you start writing. The things that you read, you start putting them into action. And guess what happens? The next time you sit to read, your brain starts paying attention to the words, to the flow of sentences, to the style, to all those things. And then the next time you try to write, it brings those things in. It brings those things in, and you start writing, and you're writing things that are excellent, that are beautiful, that are awesome. If you write, so writing itself will help you. So it's reading more or reading more. It's not, you're not going to get there. Writing itself will help you get there faster. So the first thing is you have to make a dichotomy between reading and writing. So this time is for reading, this time is for writing, and the writing itself is writing. Like, we don't complicate it. That I'm checking and coming up with ideas. Coming up with ideas is great, it's awesome. Of course, you need ideas to write, but coming up with ideas is not writing. Let's know, because we might see, you can start coming up with ideas from now to the next 30 years and don't get to write anything, right? Because coming up with ideas itself is more safe, is safer than writing itself. So what happens is that there are a lot of tasks that looks like writing, but they are safer, less risk than writing itself, even though they might be risky, but less risk than writing itself. And so your brain tricks you to do those stuff instead of doing the actual writing. So you must be careful. Like, okay, this is writing, and then you get to write. So the only way you can appreciate reading is when you write. And sometimes I open a piece of book and I'm like, I feel inspired. Like, dude, I can actually write this. Like, I just feel the possibility running through me, and I'm like, wow, it's time to write, right? So don't let putting off reading itself be the reason why you don't get to write. It's more like you have ingredients. You're like, oh, I don't really have all the ingredients complete. And the question I'm asking is, do you really, really, really need to eat? You're like, yeah. Then if you really, really need to eat, use the ingredients you have. That itself, it will teach you to learn to use what you have to create what you want. And most of us, we have a lot of experience. Of course, reading itself is important, but that should not be the reason why you do not write itself. Because if you say that I want to read more so I can get better at writing, and then because you are reading more, you don't get to write, that itself kills the whole idea and purpose and the reason why you are reading more in the first place. Because if reading more stops the writing itself, then I don't really know how you would explain that to me. So the question, of course, reading more is great, but they have to go along the way together. Like, together. It's not like, oh, I need to pause my writing for the next 5 years. Let me just consume a lot of works I need to consume, and then I'll start writing. Dude, writing itself is a skill, something you do. It's not necessarily something that, oh, I have so much knowledge, I've read so much books, right? Of course, reading helps a lot. It helps to improve your diction. It helps to help you identify bad writing, especially when you read a lot of good writing, because then you see stuff like, nah, you just have this intuitive feeling that, nah, this is absolute trash, right? So let's reading itself not be the reason why we do not write. So a couple of points I have here is reading is crucial, but it shouldn't prevent you from writing. If it stops you from writing, it's an enemy. It's an obstacle. It is procrastination. Yeah. The next thing is, writing itself is a powerful learning tool. You learn a lot. In fact, one of the quotes I heard, I can't remember who said this quote, is that writing is thinking, it's articulation of thoughts. You would get better at combining the resources you have when you write, right? It's like, apart from writing creatively, writing itself helps you to clear your thoughts, helps you to organize your thinking, helps you to get more articulate, helps you to gather all the knowledge you have, helps you to what do we call this now, to distill information, help you to allow information, ideas spring forth from each other when you write. Then saying over preparation can lead to perfectionism and writer's block. So sometimes reading itself can be a way to escape from writing. So the best thing is to do is to schedule your writing, to say, okay, this is the time I'm going to write, and I'm not permitted to do any of that thing other than write. And then other times you can read, you can do every other research you need to do what you need to do. But this time is for writing, and it's not negotiated. Okay, so a couple of practical tips I have here is, number one is set aside time for both reading and writing. So it should be, there's time for reading, there's time for writing, right? Of course, you need to do a lot of reading, but then you also need to do writing too. Then you need to read actively, analyzing techniques. you can apply to your own writing. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't just enjoy a piece of work. You don't have to always be dissecting a piece of work. Sometimes I saw this quote from one author, I can't remember if it's Mark Twain or so, but he said that you, in an attempt to find out why a frog is a frog, you end up losing the frog. So sometimes you just have to watch the frog being the frog. You get, of course, there are times where you have to dissect and do all the stuff, but sometimes you just have to watch the frog being the frog. So the next thing is you have to start writing now and use reading to refine your skills, right? So you have to start writing now and use reading to refine your skills, to get feedback, to get better, to identify things, to practice and put things into your writing, rather than, okay, let me wait. No, it's not going to wait. Don't use reading to be an excuse for not writing, right? Now, let's face that. Let's be real. Use what you have to write what you can right now. You get, I'm not saying that maybe you've not read so much. I'm not saying that what you have is going to maybe make you a bestseller or a great piece of work. Let's be honest here. I'm not saying that. It could be, it could not. But what I'm saying is that what you have is enough for you to create something and create that thing that you can create with what you have right now. In the future, when you get better, you can create an absolute masterpiece. But for now, do what you have with what you can, right? That's the whole idea behind it. The next thing is you can join a book club or a writing group to discuss what you read and write, so that you get better perspective on how writers put things into place and everything. Which there are a lot of online book clubs online. There are also local book clubs too, and writing groups. A lot of them online, you can search around, or you can create one for yourself. If you have writer friends or reader friends, you guys can put something together. Okay. So now, what challenge do I have for you? Your challenge for today is to spend 15 minutes reading a piece in your preferred genre or genre of writing, and immediately write for 15 minutes and trying to apply technique, element, or style, whatever. Just write. Yeah, it's a fun challenge. Just do it and see where it leads to. So far, if you want to follow along with my writing journey, a quick disclaimer: this is an episode series that I did for me to bust all my writing excuses. And so basically, this is me speaking out aloud and reasoning with myself aloud why all my excuses for not writing are silly, and then possibly coming up with ways how I can create time to write and move past those excuses. So I'm not a guru or any of those things. I'm just a beginner starting out. Okay, that out of the way. The next thing is, if you want to follow along with my writing journey, you can get subscribed to the newsletter at buildwriting.com/newsletter, or you can check the link in the description. And please subscribe, follow on whatever platforms you are. Leave a review if you love this episode. It helps other writers to discover this episode too. Until next time, I have been your host, Oyemi Chinua Konam, and you've been listening to the Build Writing Podcast. Until next time, keep writing.